Narrative 1. Sebastian Argumedo. The Mysterious Twins. San Rafael, Argentina. On a cold autumn night in the tranquil city of San Rafael, I found myself immersed in an experience that would change my life forever. As a new student at the Southern San Rafael High School, I faced the loneliness and uncertainty of not having friends in a place where everyone seemed to have their social circles established. One day, during lunchtime in the bustling school cafeteria, I found myself desperately searching for a place to sit. With anxiety pounding in my heart, my eyes landed on a table in the corner occupied by two identical twins, Miguel and Juan. Gathering courage, I approached and timidly asked if I could join them. The twins exchanged glances, and finally one of them nodded, inviting me to share their table. As we conversed, Miguel and Juan seemed friendly and welcoming, breaking the barrier of loneliness I had felt since arriving at school. They shared intriguing stories, and soon invited me to join them after classes in a special place near the local cemetery. Intrigued by the prospect of a new friendship, I accepted the twins' invitation without knowing that this decision would lead me down a dark and terrifying path. That night, around 9 p.m., I headed to the meeting at the cemetery, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness as I walked along the dark path. Upon reaching the agreed-upon place, Juan sent me a message saying they were in the woods by a small lake. With courage, I ventured into the forest, illuminating my path with the faint light of my phone. However, as I advanced, a sense of unease crept over me, as if something were watching me in the darkness. Suddenly I heard footsteps behind me, low and slow steps that filled me with fear. A whispering voice warned me to stop, but I decided to press on. Without warning, a figure emerged from the shadows and attacked me, digging its claws into my neck and choking me. Amidst the desperate struggle to free myself, I managed to escape and ran towards the road, feeling the relief of momentary freedom. However, the sense of danger persisted, and I knew the twins had something sinister behind their friendly appearance. Back home, I found myself tormented by the traumatic experience in the woods. The nights became unsettling with the feeling that someone was watching me from the shadows. Every time I closed my eyes, I relived the terror of that night in the forest. As the days passed, the twins, Miguel and Juan, became an ominous presence in my life, lurking around every corner and filling my mind with paranoia. As weeks went by, strange events intensified, with whispers in the darkness and shadows moving in the periphery of my vision. Finally, one night I woke up startled, feeling a presence in my room. Upon opening my eyes, I saw the twins standing by my bed, with a malevolent smile on their identical faces. Terror gripped me as the twins approached slowly, their eyes shining with supernatural light. In a desperate act, I screamed for help, but my voice seemed to be drowned in the darkness of the room. The twins lunged at me, enveloping me in a cold mist that transported me to a realm of nightmare. I fought them and managed to free myself. But no one believed my story. No one believed that such friendly boys could do such a thing. I never saw them again. Since then, I knew that in the tranquil city of San Rafael, there were more hidden stories. It is said that the spirits of many teenagers still roam the dark forests near the cemetery, trapped in an eternal torment with the terror of the friendly twins. My story became an urban legend, reminding everyone that in darkness lurk complicated secrets and that friendship can hide unimaginable terrors. Narrative 2. Stephen Mallior. The Mysterious Professor, Colorado Town. I will never forget the day Professor Dark arrived at our high school. It was early in my junior year, when most of us were 15 or 16 years old. That tall, thin, pale man with piercing black eyes and a cold gaze introduced himself at the opening ceremony. The principal announced that Professor Blackwood would be teaching a new elective class called Occult Studies. From the first day, Professor Blackwood made it clear that he was no ordinary teacher. He forbade us from calling him professor and demanded to be called master. His class was dark and eerie, filled with ancient books, black candles, and strange symbols on the walls. He made us read passages from books about black magic, demonology, and satanic rituals. Many of us felt uncomfortable, but no one dared to challenge him. Gradually, Master Blackwood began selecting certain students for special training. I was one of them. After class, I stayed behind to learn hidden spells and rituals. The master told me I had a gift and that I should develop my powers. Although I was scared, I also felt flattered to be chosen. One night, Master Blackwood asked me to stay after class for an important ritual. He locked the classroom door and drew a magic circle on the floor with black chalk. Then he lit black candles in each corner and began reciting strange words in Latin. I stood in the center of the circle as he instructed. Suddenly, I felt a strange energy coursing through my body. The air grew cold, and the candles flickered. Then, a dark, twisted figure appeared in the doorway. It was a demon. I screamed in terror, but Master Blackwood ordered me to stay still. The demon approached us, its eyes gleaming with malice. The master spoke to it in a low voice, and the demon nodded. Then it vanished in a cloud of red smoke. After that, Master Blackwood told me he had made a pact with the demon to give me magical powers. He warned me not to tell anyone about our activities or the demon would come for me. I was terrified, but also fascinated by my new powers. I began using magic to get revenge on bullies and to get what I wanted. Soon I became arrogant and cruel, but one day things got out of control. I used magic to seriously hurt a classmate who had been bothering me. When Master Blackwood found out, he was furious. He told me I had broken the rules and that the demon would come for me. That night, while I was alone in my room, I heard a chilling noise. It was the demon. Its eyes glowed with fury and its claws reached out for me. I screamed and screamed, but no one could hear me. The demon grabbed me and dragged me into the shadows. I woke up hours later trembling with fear. Since then, I have had nightmares about the demon and Master Blackwood. Now, years later, I realized that Master Blackwood was a satanic sorcerer who had summoned the demon. He used students to perform evil rituals and feed the demon with negative energy. Many of my classmates were also victims of his deception. Some went mad, others disappeared mysteriously. Sometimes I wonder if the demon still pursues me. I feel a dark presence around me and hear whispers in the night. Perhaps Master Blackwood and the demon are still out there, seeking new souls to corrupt. This is a story I will never tell anyone, except you, because if I do, perhaps the demon will come for me again. Story 3. Israel Mini-Entry. The School of Spirit. Asunción, Paraguay. Since I was a child, I always heard stories about the spirit that roamed the school after everyone went home. My friends and I used to laugh at those legends, thinking they were just tales to scare the younger ones. However, one afternoon, after staying behind to finish a project, I experienced something that changed my skepticism completely. It was Friday afternoon and the sun was setting slowly, tinting the sky with orange and pink hues. As I finished gathering my things in the empty classroom, I heard a soft whisper that seemed to come from somewhere nearby. At first, I thought it was my imagination playing tricks on me, but the whisper persisted, growing louder and clearer with each passing second. Intrigued and somewhat frightened, I decided to follow the sound. I ventured into the deserted hallways of the school, with only the dim light of emergency lamps illuminating my way. Every step I took echoed in the silence, creating a sense of unease that gripped me. That's when I saw it. An ethereal figure materialized in front of me, with a blurry appearance and a presence that sent chills down my spine. Its eyes shone with a ghostly light, fixed on me as if it could see through my soul. I tried to step back, but my feet seemed to be glued to the ground, unable to move. The spirit approached slowly, emitting a whisper that echoed in my head, filling it with disturbing images and murmuring voices. I felt an intense cold that penetrated my bones, while fear took hold of every fiber of my being. What did this spirit want? Why had it chosen me? In a moment of bravery fueled by desperation, I closed my eyes and gathered courage. With a trembling voice, I asked the spirit what it wanted from me. To my surprise, the figure slowly faded away, leaving only a whispering echo that faded into the air. After that encounter, I never stayed alone in the school at dusk again. The legends about the spirit roaming the halls had come to life before my own eyes, leaving an indelible mark on my memory. Although I never knew the true nature of that spirit, its presence reminded me that in the unknown and the dark, forces beyond our understanding lurk. Since then, every time I see the sunset and the shadows lengthen in the school, I can't help but remember the piercing gaze of the spirit and the whisper that still resonates in my dreams. Sometimes, I wonder if I will ever encounter it again, or if its presence was just a reminder that in the darkness, the unimaginable can come to life. Story 4. Alex Lizam. The Ghostly Companion. Guadalajara, Mexico. It all began at the beginning of the school year when I met Daniel. He was a new kid at our high school, recently transferred from another city. At first, I didn't think much of him. He was quiet and kept his head down, as if trying to blend in. But there was something about him that unsettled me, a kind of permanent sadness in his gaze. My name is Alex, and being a fairly sociable guy, I tried to include Daniel in our group of friends. However, it seemed like others either didn't notice him or didn't care. I often saw him alone, sitting at the back of the classroom or wandering the hallways during recess. One day after class, I decided to approach him. "Hi, Daniel. I'm Alex. Would you like to join us after school?" I asked. He stared at me for a few seconds before nodding silently, not saying a word. That afternoon, we gathered at the nearby park, but Daniel's presence made everyone feel uncomfortable. He barely spoke, and his responses were brief and monotonous. Despite that, I felt a strange obligation to keep trying to be his friend. Over time, I began to notice strange things. Daniel never seemed to age in the photos from previous school yearbooks. Once, while browsing through some old yearbooks in the library, I saw a photo of Daniel from 5 years ago. He looked the same, with the same somber expression. My curiosity turned into obsession, and I began to investigate more about him. One afternoon, I decided to talk to Mrs. Henderson, the librarian. She had worked at the school for over 20 years and knew all the students. I showed her Daniel's photo and asked if she remembered him. Her reaction was unexpected. Her face went pale, and her hands began to tremble. "That boy, Daniel," she whispered, looking around as if afraid someone might overhear. "He died 5 years ago in a car accident. He was a bright student, but one day, coming back from a school trip, the bus had an accident, and Daniel was one of those who didn't survive." A shiver ran down my spine. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. However, everything fit. The way no one else seemed to notice him, how he was always alone, and his unchanging appearance in the photos. That night, I could hardly sleep. My mind was full of questions and fears. The next day, I decided to confront Daniel. I waited for him after class, right where he used to walk alone to his house. "Daniel, I need to talk to you," I said firmly. He stopped and looked at me with those sad, empty eyes. "I know what you are. I know you're dead," I blurted out. Daniel showed no emotion, but his eyes shone with something I couldn't identify. Finally, he spoke. "You know now. But what will you do with that information?" he asked, his voice sounding more distant and ethereal than usual. I was speechless. What could I really do? Tell everyone I saw a ghost? No one would believe me. I decided to keep talking to him, trying to understand more. "Why are you still here?" I asked. Daniel sighed, looking at the ground. "I don't know. I guess I haven't been able to leave because I still have unfinished business. I don't remember much about my life before the accident, but I know there's something I have to do." From that moment on, I began to help Daniel uncover what was keeping him trapped. We went through old school records, interviewed teachers and classmates who still remembered the accident. Little by little, I started to piece together Daniel's last days before the accident. One day, while rummaging through the old school storeroom, we found a box with Daniel's belongings. Among them was an unopened letter addressed to someone named Emily. I remembered Emily, a girl who had left school shortly after the accident. They used to be very close. With the letter in hand, I went to look for Emily. She lived in a nearby town, and after a few days of searching, I managed to find her address. When I handed her the letter, her reaction was one of surprise and sadness. She opened it slowly, and her eyes filled with tears. It was a farewell letter, where Daniel confessed his love for her and his regret for not having told her sooner. Emily thanked me, and as we talked, a sense of relief washed over me. That same night when I got home, I felt a presence beside me. Daniel was there, but this time his expression was different. There was peace in his eyes. "Thank you, Alex. I think I can rest now," he said softly, and with those words he disappeared. I never saw Daniel again, but the experience left its mark on me forever. I understood that sometimes spirits cling to this world for reasons we don't understand. Helping Daniel find his peace taught me to appreciate life more and to be mindful of the people around us. Although it was a terrifying experience, it was also a lesson in compassion and friendship that I will never forget. Story 5. Luke Strainman. The noises behind the chalkboard. Tennessee town. The first time I heard the noise, I thought it was my imagination. It was an autumn afternoon, and I had stayed after school to finish a history project in room 3B. Jefferson High School always had a somewhat eerie atmosphere at dusk, with empty hallways and shadows lengthening under the dim light of the fluorescent bulbs. I was focused on my work when I heard a soft murmur behind the chalkboard. At first, I ignored it, thinking it was just the sound of the old building settling, but the murmur continued, becoming a more defined whisper. I looked up, frowning at the chalkboard. There was no one else in the room. The sound grew louder, as if someone were speaking right behind the chalkboard. I approached slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. I pressed my ear against the cold surface of the chalkboard and listened. I could make out words, but they were unintelligible, as if they were in a language I didn't know. I stepped back, feeling a chill run down my spine. I tried to convince myself it was just the wind or some noise from another part of the building. However, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. I decided to forget about the pending work and gather my things to go home. The next day, I couldn't stop thinking about the whispers. I mentioned it to my friend Mark during lunch, hoping he would help me rationalize what I had heard. "It was probably just the pipes or something," he said, shrugging. "That school is so old. There are probably a bunch of weird noises." But I wasn't convinced. That afternoon, I convinced Mark to stay with me after school to investigate. We returned to room 3B, and when everything was silent again, the whispers started once more. This time, we both heard them clearly. "What the hell is that?" Mark whispered, his face pale. We approached the chalkboard, and suddenly the whisper turned into a sharp scream. We approached the chalkboard, and suddenly the whisper turned into a sharp scream. We jumped back, fear gripping us. Then, without warning, the chalkboard began to move slowly, as if someone were pushing from the other side. "Let's get out of here!" I shouted, and we both ran to the door. As we ran down the hallway, we heard more noises coming from the walls. They were bangs, scratches, as if someone were trapped inside and trying to get out. We stopped short when we saw Mrs. Green, the janitor, at the end of the hallway. "What are you doing here so late?" she asked in her raspy voice. We explained what we had heard, hoping she would tell us it all had a logical explanation, but instead, her expression hardened. "Go home. Now," she said sharply. "You shouldn't be here after dark." We didn't need any more warnings. We quickly left the school, the echo of the noises still ringing in our heads. That night I couldn't sleep. The whispers and screams kept repeating in my mind. I decided to investigate more about the school's history. The next day, I went to the library and searched through the old archives. What I found chilled me to the bone. Decades ago, during the construction of the school, there was a tragic accident. Several workers were trapped behind the walls when a section of the building collapsed. They were never able to rescue them in time, and their bodies remained there buried forever. I recounted what I had discovered to Mark. We were both terrified, but we also felt a strange obligation to do something. That afternoon, we returned once more to room 3B, armed with tools and reckless determination. We began to dismantle the chalkboard, and behind it we found a wall of bricks. The whispers grew louder, and now we could distinguish words pleading for help. With trembling hands, we started to remove the bricks one by one. Finally, we found a small hole, and inside it, human remains. We looked at each other, horrified and unsure of what to do. We decided to inform Mrs. Green. When we showed her what we had discovered, her expression became even more severe. "You shouldn't have done this," she said, her voice trembling. "Now you've awakened something that cannot be controlled." We were frozen. Before we could respond, the lights in the classroom flickered and went out, plunging us into darkness. The whispers turned into deafening screams, and we felt a cold, malevolent presence surrounding us. "Run!" shouted Mrs. Green. We ran out of the classroom, but the noises followed us down the hall. When we finally reached the exit, silence fell. Mrs. Green looked at us with desperation. "We can't stop them. It's best to seal this place and hope that—" Her voice broke. That night, when I got home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed us. The whispers had stopped, but deep down, I knew we weren't safe. Something darker and more sinister had been unleashed, and we had no idea how to face it. If you enjoyed these stories, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to see and hear more terrifying tales.